Welcome to the show, everybody. It's the Crypto Lark. Today, I got to sit down with the team from Origin Protocol to discuss their upcoming token sale and their project bringing blockchain and the sharing economy together. We're going to be getting into that interview after a quick shout out to everyone who's been hitting that like button and, of course, everyone who's been subscribing to the channel. If you're not subscribed to the channel yet, make sure you hit that button down below or the bell to stay up to date with all of the latest in the crypto space. Furthermore, this is, of course, not professional financial advice. This is just a dude talking about cryptocurrencies on the internet. This is a token sale. Please do your own due diligence before going out and getting involved in any token sale. There is always, of course, a certain amount of inherent risk. Furthermore, I'd like to highlight that this is not a sponsored interview. This is just a project that I think is really interesting and you may want to know some more information about. Let's get into it. Today, I am very honored to have with me Matthew Liu. He is the former Vice President of Product Management at Quickie and Bonobos, former Product Management at Google and YouTube, serial entrepreneur, co-founder of Price/, and Unicycle Labs, and of most interest to us here at the Crypto Lark channel today, the co-founder of Origin Protocol. Matthew, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate being able to speak to you and your great audience.
I'm really excited to have you on because Origin Protocol is one of those projects that have been getting a lot of hype, and I want to dig into the reasons that are why it has been getting so much hype. So for anybody who hasn't heard of this, can you give us the short version? What are you guys doing?
Yeah, so we're building a set of open source protocols that will enable many different decentralized marketplaces to be built on the blockchain. So essentially what we're saying is there a way that in the future we can have decentralized versions of Airbnb, GetAround, Elance, Fiverr, even Uber or Didi in the future? So how do we create a set of open standards and open source code that many different entrepreneurs and developers can use to build this new form of decentralized commerce? A lot of what we're focusing on beyond core marketplace functionality is also centered around the fractional usage of assets and services. So again, on the asset side, it's how do you split up a home or a car? On the services side, how do I use my time? Perhaps it's contracting services, perhaps it's home services. And it's really interesting opportunity to kind of shake things up in the sharing economy and also provide a brand new way for buyers and sellers to connect without those intermediaries in between.
Decentralization is awesome, and getting rid of those intermediaries is one of the amazing things that I think that just shake things up so much. But for everybody out there who likes using Airbnb, who likes using Uber and all these other traditional services, what do you see as being broken with the current sharing economy players?
Yeah, so first off, I want to say that I'm also an avid user of Uber and Airbnb. I think they're great services, and they've done an amazing job in creating both the ability to get income on the supplier side, whether you're a host or a driver, but also now consumers have brand new ways of interacting with the world, right? So I can hop into a stranger's car, or I can rent a stranger's house over the weekend. And that's an experience that didn't exist 10 years ago. And so for their efforts, I think Airbnb and Uber should actually be applauded for a lot of their achievements. Now, that doesn't mean they're perfect. That doesn't mean that we can't do better. And that doesn't mean that now that they've created this first set of innovations, that there shouldn't be a second set of innovations beyond that. So here are some of the things that really motivate us at Origin Protocol and really get us up in the morning to try to take the sharing economy to the next level. The first of which is all these middlemen, Uber and Airbnb included, they take fees. They act as this centralized intermediary, and they take anywhere from 10%, 15%, 20%, all the way up to, in some extreme cases, 40% of transaction value. And this is for every single transaction that happens on each of these marketplaces. While this was probably justified in the early days when they were building up these markets and consumers, that yes, it is okay to get into a stranger's car and that stranger will drive you to your destination. Years later, this is really a tax on the system, right? They shouldn't still be using these de facto business models that in a way make them stronger and stronger as monopolies, but then they're less and less serving of the actual individual consumers and suppliers in the network. So that's the first reason that we think decentralization can be really helpful. We're able to lower fees between both sides, and that means both the buyer and seller are more happy from an economic standpoint, right? They can meet somewhere in the middle. This 20% fee is reduced to hopefully zero or virtually zero, and both sides get a better price. Second reason that we're very, very motivated and we think that the existing sharing economy companies can be improved is really around censorship and regulation. So Airbnb today is very heavily regulated in San Francisco. Uber's outright banned in certain cities and countries. You can't take the equivalent of an Uber X in South Korea, for example, right? So you can only
That's crazy.
Professional drivers, not peer-to-peer drivers. And there are lots of goods and services even beyond Uber and Airbnb that oftentimes we in the Western world that usually have more liberal and open business stances take for granted. And in certain other parts of the world, these very basic liberties are not offered to people. And so one of the things that we're very motivated by is how do we actually reduce censorship by taking away this single point of failure? And with decentralization, there isn't a single point of failure. You can actually have these peer-to-peer transactions. It still means that these individual peer-to-peer buyers and sellers need to comply with local laws, but it certainly makes it way harder for the city of San Francisco, for example, to blanket take down 5,000 listings on Airbnb because they're saying, hey, they don't comply with these new rules that we came up with a couple months ago. It certainly makes it harder for entire countries to not have services like ride sharing. Or there's other areas as well that, again, that we take for granted in the Western world that can now actually be provided to some of these, let's just call more oppressive regions all around the globe. Third reason that we think existing marketplaces can be improved is that these existing marketplaces end up creating these monopolies, right? And there's a lot of value creation within these regional monopolies, whether it is, let's say, like a Didi, which is the Chinese equivalent of Uber, that's doing extremely well in China, or other regional versions of that, right? So there's Grab. There's Ola. And so in each of these regions, we see, one or two dominant players. They accrue all the value. All the investors make a ton of money. The founders, the early employees make a lot of money. But the actual marketplace participants, the individual buyers and sellers, the people that are renting their homes, the people that are renting their cars, the contractors that are writing software code or designing websites or creating marketing videos, the home services people that are cleaning people's houses, they don't really get any type of reward other than being able to perform their services on these networks. And so with this new model where these crypto economic and blockchain platforms are coming into existence, we can then create a better than free usage model where people that are using these new marketplaces are actually giving rewards. And so we think that's very, very interesting, both conceptually and practically, in the way that these participants can now actually have a certain amount of stake in the networks that they're participating in.
I love these new business models, by the way. The idea that you're going to shake it up to the point where instead of paying massive fees, you're actually going to get rewarded for participating. Like that's really groundbreaking stuff for consumers, for people who are out there driving those cars. That's really big.
Yeah, it's totally paradigm shifting, right? And we imagine a world where if you are a user on the Origin platform and you refer your friends, then you should be rewarded by actually referring those friends. There are certain things that exist in the world today, like rewards points, that should exist in a programmatic way on the blockchain. There are, on the flip side, things where if users are doing negative behaviors, they should be penalized by the smart contracts that we have on the blockchain. So it creates a brand new way of interaction. A lot of this is still very early, very theoretical, but I think as an industry, as we push forward, it's this decentralization concept coupled with the new incentive models with cryptocurrencies that make things really, really interesting. One last point, just to explain, why we're doing what we're doing, is that there are 2 billion people that are unbanked across the world right now. They don't have bank accounts. They don't have access to stable currency. They don't have credit. And right now, they are really left behind, right? They're not able to participate in these digital marketplaces like Airbnb or Uber or even like a Craigslist. And so we have an opportunity in the next few years as these individuals, despite not having bank accounts, have cheap Android phones. and hopefully soon to be digital wallets that will support cryptocurrencies to potentially leapfrog some of the limitations that they currently face and start participating much more in the global economy. So to the extent that we can put a small dent in the way that they do business as individual buyers and sellers, let's say in less fortunate countries than the United States or New Zealand, we're very, very happy to help push that mission forward.
That's awesome. Empower people. People want to work. They want to have the options, but they just don't have them sometimes. Like you said, there's local bylaws or whatever that prevent people from being able to actually access these things or to rent their homes out or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But if we take away the gatekeepers and incentivize them, wow, it's an exciting time to be involved in all this stuff without a doubt. Now,
absolutely.
I want to ask, you guys have an MVP out already, and that's running on the Ethereum test network. What's been the response to that? How is that going?
Yeah, so the MVP is mostly a technology demonstration that you can, in fact, build a decentralized marketplace on the Ethereum blockchain, and also using IPFS, the interplanetary file system for distributed file storage. So it's a fairly early prototype, but it's been very well received in the community. I think we are doing our very best to do all of our development open. So for example, our GitHub, everything there is open source. All of our weekly engineering meeting notes, as well as our engineering hangouts, are open. So we're actually getting many folks in the community that are actually just popping in to see what we're working on. And so this MVP is just the very first step out of many steps in realizing this future that we imagine. And there's a lot more that we have to do from a product development standpoint, but it is already live on both the Rinkeby and Robston test nets. So you can check it out at demo.originprotocol.com. And in fact, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be pushing an update to it that have a lot of interesting new features around identity, for example, and kind of the base skeleton as to how we're actually going to do a lot of the buyer and seller transactions. But even today, you can see how a fairly bare bone marketplace akin to a better looking Craigslist or something like a Letgo or OfferUp can exist on the blockchain in a decentralized way.
Cool. I want to switch into identity. You just mentioned it. I wanted to expand on that a little bit. How are you guys approaching, I guess, identity management and the secure storage of identities on the blockchain and all these different things?
Yeah. So at a high level, we know that identity is extremely, extremely important, right? And so the philosophy we're taking is that the individual user will own their own identity, but we also need to make it very easy for them to affix their real world identity as well as reputation to their Ethereum wallet, and then take that identity information across not one, but potentially many or all of our Origin-enabled partner websites and mobile applications. So the identity system we create should give the users ultimate control, but also be portable, and also to a certain extent give them a lot of optionality, right? So Origin itself will be doing a certain amount of attestation on behalf of the user, so verifying, let's say, phone numbers or email addresses, maybe social media accounts like Facebook. But we also want to offer the optionality, so if these users are already using other services, let's say Civic and Uport are getting some hype and some adoption, they should be able to do that as well. And over time, we actually imagine that there will be many different ways to actually attest to who your real world identity is. Now, on a technical level, the way we're approaching this problem is there's actually a ERC standard, ERC 725, that's been proposed. It's been proposed by Fabian, who is the same guy that proposed ERC 20, which is extremely widely adopted right now. And so we are doing our best to work with the ERC 725 standard and figure out how to do identity across this new standard. And the high-level concept is your identity is actually stored in a smart contract, and that smart contract can basically interact with a bunch of different attestation services. So a lot of engineering and product development discussion and prototyping has actually been done in the last couple of weeks around identity for Origin. We hope to have something that we can actually show to the world in the next 2 to 3 weeks or so.
Wow, really exciting. I want to shift gears to the marketplace now. In the marketplace, I'm going to be able to pay using Ethereum. I'm going to be able to pay using ERC20 tokens. What about Bitcoin?
Yeah. So great question. Currently, the way we're thinking about payments is everything will be on-chain using Ether and or tokens because ERC20 tokens can be transferred very, very easily. In the future, we need to think in a much more sophisticated way, right? So number one, Ethereum has high price volatility, as do ERC20 tokens. Also, the accumulation of ERC20 tokens can be difficult, right? It would be a fairly difficult user experience if I had to go acquire a bunch of different ERC20 tokens first before being able to transact on the network. So the way we're thinking about this is a phased approach. In phase one, you're likely going to be using Ethereum because everyone on the Ethereum network will have access to Ethereum. You may be able to use certain ERC20 tokens because many of our partners will want to have their own ERC20 tokens. But in the future, we need to think about both higher optionality in terms of currencies as well as better functioning currencies. Mm-hmm. So by the former, I'm talking about things that people are familiar with. So BTC is one great example. How do we actually figure out how to accept that into the system? But also a larger category is fiat currency. So is there a way that at some point someone will be able to swipe a credit card or use something like Apple Pay or WeChat Pay and then have that on the fly convert to the necessary tokens and or Ether that are needed to power the platform. So there's not a whole lot to necessarily comment on at that point, other than that we are thinking about this problem, right? In terms of user adoption, accessibility, we need to think of a way that we have access to a broader set of currencies. Now, very quickly on the higher functioning currency, what do I mean there? Well, price stability is the thing that comes most to mind, right? So right now, if you're trying to pay someone in, let's say 2 Ether, what does that really mean? The price fluctuates very wildly on even a minute-by-minute basis, let alone a two-week basis. And there are certain transactions where you may need to escrow money and or deposit money, and that creates all sorts of weird incentives and potential for fraud. So currency volatility is a big one that we're thinking about. Also, the ability to settle these transactions. So Ethereum right now is quite slow. Sometimes it gets congested and it may take 20 or 30 minutes for your transaction to settle. That's acceptable today in certain use cases, but at scale, it's certainly not, right? Yeah. Mainstream users are not going to want to deal with that. And so they're part of the solution may be stable coins. And so we're following very closely on different mechanisms to keep different cryptocurrencies stable and peg them, let's say, against the US dollar or the euro or the Japanese yen. There are different mechanisms that people are experimenting with. And then more broadly, we do know that we, not just us as Origin, but also the broader blockchain community needs to think about how do we actually have more highly scalable transactions on the blockchain? How do we have faster transactions? How do we have more computational power? And how do we have cheaper transactions in terms of fees? So there's a lot to work on here. I don't have all the answers. I'm not going to be able to work on all these, and certainly the rest of the Origin is not going to be able to tackle all these. But we're looking to form strategic partnerships with groups that are working on some of these problems. We have some of our own thoughts on how to do the best within the technology constraints that we have. And we are also taking very much the long view, right? So there are a lot of things that we need to build in the short term to prove out some of our assumptions, to fulfill some of our hypotheses, knowing that before we go fully mainstream, before we can fully compete and or allow our partners to compete against an Airbnb or an Uber at scale, we need to solve a lot of these technology problems over the next few years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that there's a lot of great minds out there working on solving those very issues. I know that the team over at Ethereum, for example, are working night and day on how to scale, how to keep fees low, and all these different things. So it's coming. It's just a question of when it's coming. Now, I want to know what's actually going to be on the blockchain. So we're going to have profiles, what kind of data is going to be there? Will listings be on the blockchain? Will your reputation be on the blockchain? Messages on the blockchain? What's going to be there?
Yeah, so at a high level, the eventual end state, so a couple years from now, let's say Ethereum and or other blockchains are fully scalable, I think we would want virtually everything on the blockchain. Today, there are engineering constraints that we have to deal with, right? So again, Ethereum is slow, it's not very scalable, it's expensive. Computation is fairly difficult. So the way that we are approaching the problem is all the mission critical data, transaction data, for example, is stored on the blockchain so that everyone can verify it, so that it is trustless. And less critical data, let's say metadata around who I am or metadata around certain listings, we're going to be storing on IPFS. So again, interplanetary file storage for distributed file storage. And the way that we've architected the system is we are able to, we think, efficiently store a lot of this information between the two systems without it making prohibitively expensive to use the platform. But we are creating a number of a series of smart contracts on the Ethereum blockchain. So we have, for example, a user registry that will have on the blockchain a list of all the Ethereum wallets that have gone through the origin system. We have a listing registry that then points to many different listings. Some of the data around those listings will be stored on IPFS, but the actual primary indicators, the primary keys here, will be on the blockchain.
That's really cool. There's so much potential to store all this, and it provides verification and authenticity of ratings and reviews and reputation, all this stuff. It's a really great potential here, especially for sharing economy. All that stuff really comes in is actually very important, to know that reviews are legitimate, that reputation's legitimate, that listings are legitimate, without a doubt. Now, I want to switch over to the token now. What can you tell us about the token? How does it work? What's the kind of functionalities that you're envisaging for it?
So before I tell you what the token's used for, I'll also tell you what we don't really think of the token as. So many projects these days are thinking of the token primarily as a payment instrument from buyer to seller. While we support that use case, that's not the primary utility of the token. So when we think of the token, we have two large purposes that we want to use the token for. The first is all around incentives, and the second is around governance. Incentives today is the area that we're thinking a little bit more deeply about, and we think is going to be extremely, extremely important for both the health and the growth of our platform. So within incentives, there's positive incentives and there's negative disincentives. Positive incentives will be rewards that we give to users and or other participants in the ecosystem for doing positive things. So behavior that we want to encourage. So again, if you are referring new buyers and sellers to the platform, or you're referring large businesses and enterprises to use Origin platform, you should be rewarded for that behavior. If you are taking your or making your first transaction, for example, as a new user, there should be a almost like a cashback or rewards mechanism. If you're writing a review, perhaps you're rewarded when other people say you have a very high quality review. Things that we take for granted in the existing world, let's say like writing an Amazon review or asking a friend to sign up for Facebook, these can now be, again, the better than free business model. And we can actually bake this into the code so that will programmatically reward users without us actually having to do anything ourselves. So that's the positive incentives. Negative disincentives, we've built a lot of products in the past before, and in many instances, there are examples of fraud and malicious behavior that don't really surface. And the reason they don't really surface is because there are systems and or teams of people that actually prevent this malicious behavior, right? So fraudulent transactions or inappropriate or illegal content, things like that. And so how do we actually create the right incentive systems to discourage people from taking that behavior? So we're going to have certain behaviors that actually require you to deposit a small amount of token. And then if you do something malicious, that token can actually be forfeited. An example here is, let's say I'm a business, I put out 10,000 listings for bikes on the Origin platform. Well, if it turns out that I need to stake a small amount of token for each of these, then I will not want to have 9,000 of these bikes be fraudulent or poor quality or missing wheels, because I can actually lose tokens against 9,000 of my listings. And so those are some of the interesting economic models that we're toying with right now. Again, still early, still a lot of research and implementation and testing to do, but that's how we're thinking about incentives. Governance, I'll just talk about very, very quickly, which is we know that the platform is going to evolve over time, right? It's possible that at least two things may change over time. So one, we know that the underlying technology may require some updates. Let's say some of these Ethereum scaling solutions like Plasma or like sharding and state channels. Let's say things move to a proof of stakes type system. They're going to have impacts on the smart contracts that are already built on the platform. By that, I mean the Ethereum platform.
Yeah.
And it may mean that, as I alluded to before, we end up saying, hey, we don't need IPFS for as many of the usages that we're using them for now and for data storage, and we can put more stuff within the smart contracts. Well, we can just go ahead and do that, but we'd actually prefer, after we launch our platform, to have the community also approve of these changes and say, hey, Plasma is something that we really want to implement, but you have tokens, so you should be able to cast the vote that basically says, are you in favor of these changes or not? And so that's a way that this token can be used for a light form of governance. And there are other things that we're thinking about where potentially there need to be upgrades as well. Potentially, there may be new uses for the token and new utility that we think we want to build into the system. But we want to make this as open and democratic a process as possible.
That's awesome. That's how people get interested too, and they stay involved with the community because they know not only is there that user reward for potentially being involved in the community, but also your voice is actually heard.
Yeah,
it's not
voice.
some
Absolutely.
unrepresentative company. It just makes decisions and screws everybody over and doesn't care. So that's really cool that you guys are looking at how can we have the community involved with us the whole way through. How can we make this as open source and open governance as possible, which I think is just a great representation of best practices without a doubt.
Yeah.
Now, I want to move on to the team now. I mean, your experience is absolutely stellar, and looking across the team as well, we've got a lot of other really great players involved. Would you like to highlight a few of the people that you've gotten involved with you, and are there any positions that maybe you're looking to fill or any areas where you think you could be improving your team?
Yeah, perfect. This is a great opportunity to solicit help from this greater global community. Again, I think one of the really interesting things about blockchain and cryptocurrency is that it is already global. There are really, really great people all over the world interested in helping out. And so this is a great opportunity. So yeah, on our team, there's myself, I'm one of the co-founders, and then there's Josh Fraser, who is my co-founder. And so Josh has been coding since he was the age of 10. He's, by definition, a hacker that in college was spending more time building businesses than going to classes. He's done 3 venture-backed companies before working with me, sold one of them successfully. That was Torbit to Walmart Labs. And then he and I have actually built a number of businesses together. So profitable cash flow businesses doing 7 figures of revenue a year that we have since passed off for other people to run for us. So both of us are serial entrepreneurs that have had a wealth of experience doing consumer, doing some SMB, even some enterprise type stuff. So full gamut of business sizes and different technology verticals and types of products. Stan James, our first engineer, has had a great experience. He's also an ex-founder. He founded Legit, has also been at a ton of startups. Andrew Hyde, our head of community, has done like 4 businesses. He was first employee at Techstars, which is a very well-known incubator and accelerator in the United States, based out of Colorado. It's kind of like Y Combinator. He also founded Startup Weekend, which makes him the ideal person for a community because he has startup contacts in something like 70 countries. And so he's been very integral in helping us build out our community. On the business development partnership side, we have John Hardy, who's also been in a number of startups. He was COO at his last startup, first employee. He's been, what do we call it, a Swiss Army knife in terms of filling in various business functions. We have Coleman Maher on our partnership side, who has been he's been the man in terms of signing up our developer partners. So reaching out to various different types of businesses, some of them more traditional, thinking about moving to the blockchain, and then some of them of these early startups that are figuring out how to actually build in blockchain. And so he's been responsible for almost 40 partnership deals at this point, and helping us really, really build out the developer community. Beyond our full-time hires, we actually also have a great set of additional people in our extended team. So we have a bunch of other engineers that are helping out right now, contributing very actively to our code base. In total, I think we have 40-something engineering contributors to our GitHub at this point. And we're very, very excited about that, because it means several things. One, it means that people are interested in what we're doing, and they're able to help us do a lot more as a movement versus just a private company. But two, it's also a fantastic way to meet great people all over the world. And so this is also my invitation to other folks out there that are interested in helping out. We have a very active Discord server. So if you go to originprotocol.com/Discord, that's where we do a lot of our collaborative work. So if you're an engineer, you're a designer, you're a product person, you're into business development, community moderation, customer service, all the different business functions, we'd love to see you there. And just reach out to me, reach out to other members of our core team. And there are really easy ways to start contributing, helping out. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to get feedback from the community. We try to be as open and transparent as possible with how we're doing things, what the progress is like, what our values are. You can join, talk to us. We'll send you a free t-shirt. There are other small perks that we try to give back to the community. Again, originprotocol.com/Discord to join our Discord server. And if you want something even lighter touch, you can just join our Telegram channel. We have something like 22,000 members in our Telegram channel. So that's really easy to find on Telegram. That's where we do some of our announcements. That's where you can have a much more casual interaction with us. So again, those are the two channels. If you want a little bit more deeper contribution, there are about 1,000 people already on our Discord server, originprotocol.com/Discord. And then lighter touch, join the other 20,000 plus people on our Telegram channel. So love to hear from you guys. We want to be very receptive to people's questions and comments, and be very, very participatory with the global community.
That's awesome. I'm excited to hear that you're so keen to welcome in new people, and that there are these opportunities out there for people who want to get involved. And I just love that about what's going on in the blockchain space right now. There's so many opportunities out there. So if you have the right skills, make sure you reach out to the team without a doubt. Now, I want to switch gears a little bit again to your partners. You've got a lot of really exciting partners. I want to do this in 2 stages, because I want to talk about your blockchain partners, then I want to talk about your non-blockchain partners. So let's start off with your blockchain partners. There's a lot of familiar names on here that a lot of people out there are going to know. For example, you're already working with Proppy, with B-Token, with Kenya. Can you tell me about those partnerships and what you're envisaging for them?
Yeah, totally. So these are, I would say almost like household names in the blockchain community right now. These are all great projects. We've been very, very fortunate to meet their founders and their extended teams and be able to, build that rapport and align our incentives and our missions to try to build something great together. So as an example, a lot of these guys, B-Token, Kenya, they are working on their own decentralized marketplaces. They're in specific verticals, right? So Kenya is more contracting services. B-Token is around home sharing, so decentralized Airbnb. And so there's a lot of work that we all collectively need to do in order to create all the functionality that existing marketplace like a Fiverr or Elance or an Airbnb have that don't yet exist on a blockchain. And so how do we actually split up this work and win together? So as an example, these projects have certain decentralized components. A lot of it is around that transaction flow. B-Token, for example, has a transaction contract. They have a new arbitration contract. And Kenya has a lot of different uses for their smart contracts and their tokens. Some really interesting use cases for Kenya, for example, like having a required minimum amount of Kenya token to unlock certain functionality. Right, so it encourages a lot of people to almost have like a membership or a subscription to the Kenya platform. And so there's a lot that they're building, right? There's a ton of stuff that needs to be done though. And a lot of things that we're seeing are a lot of them take first a centralized approach. There's like a centralized web or mobile application. And then there are decentralized components that are very, very crucial and probably the most important for their marketplaces, centering around like transactions, escrow, deposit, things like that. The way that we're working with them is that we're trying to start out as decentralized as possible and have a set of protocols for decentralized listings, figuring out how to do identity on the blockchain with ERC 725, as well as our slight adjustments to how to work with that standard, to think about how we can build as much of the core marketplace behavior and functionality in a decentralized way, so that when Btoken or when Kenya or Poppy want to go more and more decentralized, our set of protocols is ready for them to migrate some of their data that's stored in a traditional database on a traditional hosting site like AWS or something, directly onto the blockchain using Ethereum and IPFS. So that's largely the way that we're working with them on the technical side. There's also a part of this partnership relationship that centers around co-promotion and marketing of each other's initiatives, right? So we're all trying to build decentralized marketplaces, trying to get the word out to the community, get customer adoption. And so let's figure out how to do that together. So both of those things have proven to be really, really interesting to work on. And we look forward to having continued fruitful relationships with partners like Kenya, Btoken, Proppy, et cetera.
Very cool. Now, what's really interesting for me, you and I were chatting just a little bit before we started recording here, and we were talking about some non-blockchain businesses which are looking to really up their game by bringing in blockchain. Can you highlight a few of those examples for us?
Yeah, so two of our most recent partners that have basically said that they want to build on Origin when we're ready are Kozaza out of South Korea and Service Hero out of Malaysia. And so these are two existing marketplaces that already have real users, real suppliers, real revenue. There's actually a lot that's already been built. Kozaza has been around for, I believe, 6 or 7 years. Service Hero has been in the home services business for a number of years across 3 countries. They have hundreds of thousands of users, many, many different suppliers. And so both these companies, I think, are at a stage where business is going reasonably well, but it's also like, will they ever reach the Airbnb level? Or will they ever reach the Handy level, which is like a home cleaning service in the United States? And is there a way to accelerate growth within their marketplaces, to change the paradigm, to work with innovative technology? And so blockchain, to a certain extent, is a disruptor, but disrupting your own business and then taking advantage of those benefits is much better than waiting around for 3, 4, 5 years for someone else working in the blockchain to disrupt you. And so I think this is the opportunity that these innovative companies are starting to take, right? And there's a bit of an innovator's dilemma where if you're a larger, more successful company, you don't want to necessarily cannibalize your existing business model. But if you are forward thinking, if you are willing to take that risk, if you have that foresight and that belief in blockchain technology and decentralization, now's a great time to start moving forward. And so we're working with them to figure out what is the best way for them to migrate their data to the blockchain using Origin protocols, again, once we launch. And we're really excited because they already have existing businesses. Kozaza is a niche home sharing business that is traditional Korean homes, some of them like hundreds of years old. Eric Schmidt, through Google, I believe was an investor advisor. And so they're like interesting businesses, dozens of businesses, maybe hundreds of businesses worldwide that are not yet household names that are playing within the sharing economy. And we think that, taking the same strategy that Airbnb is taking or a Fiverr is taking is probably not going to work, right? Those companies have certain network effects and monopolistic advantages. But if you change your business model, you migrate to the blockchain, you create new crypto economic incentives for your buyers and sellers, you give up certain things like your data silo, but then you create new opportunities for the people on your network and also you as a business. So it's really, really fascinating. I think this is an inflection point that we're seeing where only in the past 6 months or so are we seeing some of these existing businesses with real users, real revenue, starting to take the leap of faith and join the decentralized blockchain movement. And we're very, very happy to be partnered with folks like these to helping them achieve their dreams and visions.
It's such a cool concept, and I think that any business out there that's listening to this right now, take note. Don't wait to be disrupted. Disrupt yourselves. Get ahead of the curve here. It's such a fantastic concept. Disrupt your own business. Why wait for someone else to do it?
The best companies in the world have, right? Multiple times over.
Exactly. Stay ahead of the curve, guys. Now, our final question for you today. I know you guys are still finalizing some of the details, but what details can you share with us at this point about the token sale?
Yeah, so there's not too much we can share right now. We're very, very focused on building out the platform. So all hands on deck on the engineering product development side. We're also looking to build out our team and hire. Those are our two most important priorities. And so we're really trying to set ourselves apart by building a lot of technology, hitting our milestones, having a lot of proof points before thinking about a token distribution event. What I can say is that there will be more news about how we're thinking about our token and a distribution. I wouldn't necessarily say it is or is not a sale of some sorts, but we are thinking about token mechanics as well as distribution. We'll likely have something to announce in the next 1 to 2 months. So folks that are interested, please do stay engaged with us. Visit our website to learn more about what we're doing. Visit our Telegram channel to engage with our community moderators, as well as all the members of our full-time team. So we all take shifts because we want to make ourselves accessible to answer questions and to gather community feedback, right? That's the best way to engage, and also it's the best way to improve our product, our platform, our company. And then for folks that want to take that next leap and get even more involved, again, Discord is where we're doing all our collaborative work. So originprotocol.com/Discord. We are doing everything we can to be open and transparent, to update everyone on our progress and where everything's going. So again, check us out, look at our meeting notes, join our engineering hangouts, poke around our GitHub if you're a developer, if you have questions on our technology. Don't be shy, ask us about it. We're really friendly and we're really open, and we'd love to hear from you.
That's awesome. Now, as well, I'm going to be putting the links to all the relevant social channels and the website down below in the description, guys. So make sure you click through and go ahead and check that out. Check out the white paper and engage with some of the material. It's such an interesting project. We've only really scratched the surface today in our chat, but I hope that everyone's found it really useful. Matthew, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us. This has been really interesting, so thank you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate my time being here.
Thank you.